I mentioned that the theme today is commitment, and that this is sometimes thought of as the eighth attitudinal foundation. I noticed in one of the chat messages there's a kind of a suggestion that gratitude and kindness might also be in the list. Generosity is sometimes spoken of too as another sort of possible important addition. And as I say, maybe in the coming weeks we'll have a look at some of these former outliers that are actually being acknowledged in as central to mindfulness practice. I thought commitment might be a useful one to go with today, because it is the first session of a kind of a new stream. It's also something that it can be helpful to make a commitment at the beginning of a set of sessions. So whether you're intending to come each week or not, it might be helpful to see this as a fresh start, and to ask yourself, what is it that you're here for? What is it that you're committing to? We know that changing habits is rather difficult. And we also know that meditation practice changes the brain and thus begins to change habits. So I guess the question we might want to ask ourselves is, what habits am I in, and what would I like to work with in relationship to them? I use the phrase "work with" quite sort of deliberately because we can sometimes get into a fight with ourselves. I want to be like that, and I'm not like that. I'm like this. So we can only work with the present moment, and nevertheless, like an athlete trains and cultivates fitness and strength and flexibility, so there is something that happens when we practice regularly. So if we choose to practice in ways that strengthen our well-being, strengthen our kindness to ourselves and others, strengthen our patience, strengthen our resilience, then those qualities are more likely to manifest in the coming times. So by giving ourselves to something in the moment, we're actually setting the possibility that we can influence our future in helpful ways. It's not usually a kind of a quick done deal. There are moments often of insight where we connect to something that's already within us. So actually, this is another great thing about committing to. Actually, what we're really committing to is being ourselves, being the selves that are already present. So it's not like we have to become somebody else. In fact, we're letting go often of trying to become somebody else, and actually realizing that the jewel of our being is already within us. It's simply a matter of connecting to it and finding the relationship with our experience that enables us to be fully who we are. And there are some ways to help us do that. Some people might be familiar with kind of a way of describing mindfulness that was outlined about 15 years ago by Shauna Shapiro. And this is the IAA model of mindfulness. And the I is for intention. The first A is for attitude, and the second A is for attention. So IAA, intention, attitude, and attention. The intention is our deciding to practice, deciding to connect, with mindfulness. And this is important. It's not necessarily mindfulness, but it is an important step towards mindfulness. So, some people will have taken a mindfulness course And in order to do that, you needed to decide it, to have that intention, to want to, a yearning perhaps for something to take place. And then all sorts of follow-ons will have come from that intention. Finding a course, setting aside your, the required time, making a commitment to a group of people, agreeing to practice a certain amount each day. And there will have been something that motivated that intention, some connecting with maybe a value or a set of values, or something that's important to you that motivates you to try something different from whatever it was that was happening before. So that intention, if you like, is an expression of doing. It's what kind of motivates us. It's what gets us up in the morning. What's the intention? And it can be helpful to connect to what that is, because actually, if we can discover what it is, we can also remind ourselves at times of difficulty. The moments when meditation doesn't seem to be bringing us the results that we hoped it would, or maybe it did, but it isn't right now. Or this moment is particularly difficult, and maybe there's something else that would be better. So having a connection and being able to remind ourselves of our intentionality, our vision for mindfulness practice can be a useful part of making the commitment. So the second aspect then of this model is the attitude, and we've been really looking at these attitudes over recent weeks for those people who've been coming to the sessions. So these are attitudes like non-striving, non-judging, patience, trust, a beginner's mind, or we could say curiosity, acceptance. And it's a kind of a curious paradox here, because as you might have noticed, a lot of these attitudes are actually about not trying to get anywhere. So we've experienced this quality of intention, perhaps, which is about trying to get somewhere. And then we actually discover that the attitude that we need to bring is not to try to get anywhere at all, but to rest in all of those things: non-striving, non-judging, non-doing. So actually connecting to a quality of being that, if you like, is letting go. Oh yeah, there's the other one, letting go. I knew I'd miss one out. So letting go of that tendency to strive and struggle and expectation is in there too, isn't it? You're kind of expecting a result from our commitment. Actually, the commitment needs to be made wholeheartedly and with intention, but free from the expectation of a particular result. And the third quality is attention. So this is what we're practicing each time we choose to focus on a particular part of what's going on, such as breathing, or a sensation in some other part of the body, or sounds, or smells, or sights, or indeed thoughts. And by training this quality of attention, of developing the capacity to some degree, because it's never complete, but to some degree choose what we're relating to in our experience at any particular time, that enables us to experience perhaps a wiser mind, because the mind untrained will go to whatever it is already trained to go to, whatever has been practiced in the past. And quite often that's, dropping into whatever the nearest threat is, whatever the nearest discomfort is, or indeed, in some occasions, whatever the nearest pleasant object is that we can graft to. So there's a quality of committing to coming back from the automatic pilot mode, coming back from that again and again and again and again. and again, over and over and over, and trusting that this is a part of the practice. It's not it's not something that's gone wrong when the mind wanders away. It's an opportunity to cultivate a quality of strengthening attention. And it's not the whole of it, because if we focus too much on that, we're going to start getting into striving again. But simply noticing coming back, and holding that within an attitude of friendliness and gentleness. Now, we might need to flow between these three: intention, attitude, and attention, and give kind of different emphases to different parts of this model, different times. So, sometimes we might have lots going on in our lives, and it's difficult to prioritize our mindfulness practice. In that case, we might need to reconnect with intention. Or we might have strong intention, and then we sit down and we find the mind is busier than it's ever been, in which case we're working with attention and attitude, because the tendency might be to judge ourselves for that, or try to make it another way. So we can kind of tilt between these aspects of commitment as we receive the feedback from our everyday life, which is the ultimate mindfulness practice. There is one other aspect that I want to kind of add into this model, and that might be a quality of support. So it's also very helpful in maintaining a commitment to mindfulness practice to have others on the journey with us. Now, whether that's in the form of the words of others, so it might be books or guided audio practices, or whether it's a community of people like this one, or the one that John Kabat-Zinn is running every day at 7 o'clock, at least until next Friday, which was being mentioned just before the session started, and which I put a link to right at the beginning of the chat for anybody who wants to jump straight on John's call after this one. Thoroughly recommend that. But some ways of actually supporting ourselves. It might be a space in your house or your flat where there's kind of a sort of a physical reminder of meditation. It might be an object, might be a meditation stool or cushion or chair, or a particular object that reminds you of the intentions that you're intending to connect to. So having some external, some frameworks, if you like, to support those inner qualities of intention, attention, and attitude is also relevant. And recognizing that we may well fall off the wagon again and again and again, and that's just like the mind wandering. So we might go days, weeks, months, sometimes years, maybe even decades without practicing meditation. And but whenever we remember that this might be valuable to us, it's always going to be now. So in that moment, we can come back. Just as when we notice the mind's wandered, we can come back. So there's no need to create a standard for ourselves in terms of commitment. Sometimes, we might make a commitment there and immediately start judging ourselves against that commitment. And that tends to be unhelpful. It's more a commitment to being fully ourselves in each present moment as best we can, with friendliness. So there's always a balance here of kind of, a balance of effort and letting go. There is some sense of effort required to bring us to practice, to encourage us to come back to presence when we notice we've wandered off. And yet we practice that with a sense of a kind of a complete okayness that holds all of that life challenge that might seem to get in the way, but which is actually the path of meditation itself. So we can relate to all of the challenges and the obstacles, so-called obstacles and so-called hindrances, so-called other priorities mindfully, then actually that becomes our practice too. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say on the subject, but just maybe inviting you at the end of this session to perhaps ask yourself, what's my intention? What's my, what at the moment could mindfulness practice offer me in my life? What could I connect to that I yearn for or yearn to reconnect to? That practicing, coming here, sharing together, reading, whatever way you connect, what could that support me with? And then I'll let you play with attention and attitude and other supports for yourself. Okay, so how about we drop into another practice now?